Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Smedberg, Chair of the WMATA Board. Thank you for being here today at our special Board of Directors meeting. I'll start by asking our Board Corporate Secretary to call the roll. Ms. Ellison.
Chair Smedberg.
Present.
Ms. Klein.
Present.
Mr. Letourneau.
Present.
Dr. Lowe.
Present.
Mr. Drummer.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to ask our Chief Safety Officer, Teresa Impastato, to give us a brief safety contact. Teresa, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to Metro headquarters. In the event of a sounding of the Metro alarm, please exit through the side doors and follow instructions from the security team who will contact and coordinate with emergency services. An AED is located in the hallway, and in the event of a medical emergency, I'll fetch the AED and render assistance while the security coordinates with emergency services. Restrooms are also located in the hall. By being alert and reporting suspicious activity to law enforcement or a Metro employee, you can protect your family and other riders. As you're going about your trip, if you see something that doesn't quite seem right, say something. When using Metro Rail, call boxes on each rail car enable any rider to report an emergency to the train operator, who is in constant radio communication with central control. When using Metro Bus, in case of threatening or otherwise disruptive behavior on board the bus, the operator is able to activate a silent alarm that goes through central control to the police. Occupants of the bus have no way of knowing that the alarm's been activated or that the police are on their way. In an emergency, call 911. You can also send a text message to the Metro Transit Police at MyMTPD, or use the QR codes on Metro posters to text MTPD directly. For additional information, see the rider guide at WMATA.com. This concludes our safety contact.
Thank you, Teresa. I'd like to amend the agenda to include an item that was on for the executive committee, since we are just waiting for another member to arrive, and we don't have a quorum quite yet. So we'll go ahead and do that. But now, we'll move on to formally appoint a permanent Inspector General, Renee Feblis. Renee, please stand. Whereas pursuant to Resolution 2006-18, the Board of Directors established the Office of Inspector General to conduct and supervise audits, program evaluations, and investigations relating to authority activities, promote economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in authority activities, and keep the Board of Directors fully and completely informed of deficiencies in authority activities, as well as the necessity for and progress of corrective action. And whereas Resolution 2006-18 provides the Inspector General shall have a 3-year term with reappointment of no more than, actually that's changed a little bit, the wording on that. Yeah. Oh, that's the prior, yeah. Okay. And then whereas in order to streamline the reappointment process, the board desires to amend the Inspector General's term to 3 years with automatic extensions for successive 1-year terms unless within 60 days of the end of any term of the the board notifies the Inspector General that his/her term will not be extended unless terminated sooner. And whereas the Inspector General is an officer of the authority who reports to the Board of Directors and leads the Office of Inspector General, and whereas in Resolution 2022-05, the board appointed Renee Feblis as acting Inspector General effective July 17th, 2022, until a permanent Inspector General is appointed. And whereas the board wishes to appoint Mr. Feblis as Inspector General. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors deletes in its entirety the 7th resolve clause in Resolution 2006-18, and resolved that the Inspector General shall serve a term of 3 years with automatic extensions for successive 1-year terms unless within 60 days of the end of any term, the board notifies the Inspector General that his or her term will not be extended unless terminated sooner, and resolve that the Board of Directors hereby appoints Renee Feblis as Inspector General, and be it finally resolved that to provide continuity within the Office of Inspector General, This resolution shall be effective November 6th, 2022. Is there a second? Oh, I want to move approval. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Letourneau. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Ellison, please conduct the vote.
Chair Smedberg?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau?
Aye.
Dr. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Drummer?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. Renee, if you'd join me in the front of the room so we can swear you in. So please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I
I, Renee Feblis,
do hereby solemnly swear
do hereby solemnly swear
that during my term I will support the Constitution of the United States
that during my term I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the provision of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority Compact,
and the provisions of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority Compact,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all duties incumbent on me
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all duties incumbent on me
as Inspector General of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority,
as the Inspector General of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority,
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The amendment, and then we'll move into the executive.
And I just want to say something. I know recently there was a editorial or a local commentary while the entire office is here that commented on not only this board, but the Inspector General's office, and with the implication that this board and that office was just, or we let it languish for, sort of several months, or that was the clear implication of some of the comments in that. And I found that very, not very responsible, because if anyone did any kind of due diligence and any kind of basic research before they wrote that commentary, could have easily have gone to the IG website and saw the long list of accomplishments and things that that group has done over the past number of months. So I just wanted to say that, and how much this board appreciates the work that has been done during that time, and just to dispel some of the things. And I wish people that are given that kind of privilege and want to make those kind of statements should actually maybe reach out and talk to the people who actually know what's going on, or do just some kind of basic research. So I just want to thank you publicly for the work, Renee, you have done leading that office in the interim, and the work that all of you have done in the meantime. So thank you very much. Yep. Okay, when I amended the item, I meant to ask, is there anyone that had any objections to that? Sorry, we're doing it a little bit on the fly. So hearing no objections, we're good. Okay, so now we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Oh, Renee, I'm sorry, did you want to say anything? Hold on. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I just want to thank the board for your faith in me. I'm truly honored and looking forward to working with Randy. I think this is a fantastic place, and a lot of work that we've done and will continue to do. And to my staff who's here, I just want to say thank you for supporting me and being here today. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to give my congratulations to Renee. I've been here for 3 months, and I will say, and I want to recognize this publicly, the professionalism of Ray and the OIG I've been incredibly impressed by. Very much respect your role. Outside of the board, there's no one that needs you to be successful, actually more than me. You are our eyes and ears to see things that, quite frankly, I'm never going to be able to see with 12,000 people and the enormous scope of this operation. So your professionalism and your studiousness and how you work with our team to get information, and it's very, it's collegial even though you're independent. So I would say professional and courteous that way. It goes a long way, and it's great to see your whole team here, Renee. So congratulations. Look forward to many years of working together to continually make Metro the best it can be.
Okay, great. We're going to, another change. We're going to hold off on the minutes, and we're going to go right into the report. So we have one item on the agenda today. The committee will hear from Metro's external auditors on the authority's financial statement. Section 70A of the WMATA Compact requires the report of the annual independent audit shall be prepared in accordance with generally accepted auditing principles and shall be filed with the chairman and other officers of the board shall direct. This does not require board or committee action. I would like to turn the floor over to our Inspector General, Renee Feblis, who directed the audit and will provide an overview of its findings. Renee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So as you're aware, we retain the services of RSM, an independent external audit firm, to conduct both the fiscal year 2022 financial statement and the single audit. Here today with me is Dan Bonet, one of the partners for RSM. Also, as you're aware, the board adopted Resolution 2006-18 and vested in the OIG the responsibility of the oversight for the annual independent audit. In addition, the Act also requires a single audit to be conducted of federal awards. RSM has issued an unmodified opinion. An unmodified audit opinion is one in which an independent external auditor expresses the opinion that the reporting prepared in all material aspects is in accordance with applicable reporting framework. It simply means that auditors did not find any material misstatements and that the reports present a true and fair view. I'd like to thank WMATA management for all their efforts in supporting this, and in particular the CFO and their staff for helping. And if there are any questions, we'd be glad to answer.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments for the Inspector General? Dr. Lowe.
Yeah, big picture, what was the worst part of preparing this audit?
For me? Do you want to talk about a little bit about GASB?
Yeah. So in the current year, Metro was required to implement the standards of GASB 87. GASB 87 is the new lease standard, and effectively what's happened historically is that most leases were reported as operating leases, which effectively means that they were expensed as incurred. Under the new standard, every lease that's greater than 12 months is required to be reported as an asset with a corresponding liability on the financial statements. So at the end of the day, from a financial statement perspective, really it's nothing more than a gross up of your balance sheet, a gross up of your assets, and a gross up of your liabilities. But that is a vast understatement of the effort that was required to implement that standard. So every lease that Metro has had to be examined to determine all of the elements required to do the calculation. All contracts had to be examined to determine whether or not there were embedded leases within those agreements that had to be accounted for separately. So it was a very significant effort undertaken by the finance team in order to implement that standard. So that was probably the most difficult issue that we had to deal with in this year's audit.
For OIG, well, I mean, we're fortunate that we have a relationship with RSM and Dan throughout the years. But so our job doesn't end when we select the auditor. We work hand in hand with them, reviewing work papers, and for us, for OIG, ensuring that they followed standards, and we've never had an issue. Dan and his team have been fantastic, but all that work causes staff to have to stop doing other work to sort of do this work, and that's par for the course. But there's a lot of behind the scenes for OIG as well.
Sorry about that. Thank you. So on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you all and the team who oversaw this audit, ensuring that it is delivered complete and on time. I'd also like to thank Yatunde and the CFO's office and her team for their work to ensure Metro's continued financial health. This audit and its results are a testament to the great strides that Metro has made under Mr. Anaseke's leadership in the CFO's office, and the level of excellence the board seeks to maintain. So thank you very much. With no further business to come before this committee, we'll stand adjourned, and now we'll move directly to the Safety and Operations Committee. Mr. Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Smithberg. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Operations Committee. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now to approval of the minutes. Are there any objections to the minutes from our October 13th meeting? Seeing none, the minutes are also approved. Today we have one item on the agenda. In the spirit of resourcing our customers and region for success and mobility, our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Brian Dwyer, will provide an update on our rail and bus service plan. I'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and good morning to members of the board. John, I may need a little help with the slides here, right? Oh, there we go. Maybe not. Sure. Awesome. Thank you, sir. So as Chair mentioned, a quick update today on rail and bus service restorations. First, I'll talk about our rail service and how we are restoring service levels. As you are all aware, we have operated with reduced service since October 21st on the October 2021 on the rail side, since a 7,000 train derailed. Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. Pardon me, folks. We have filled that gap, obviously, 2,000 and 3,000 series fleets bridging it. Since June, we have collaborated closely with the WMSC to incrementally reintroduce the 7,000 fleet into passenger service safely. By September, up to 16 7,000 series trains ran in passenger service on red, green, and yellow lines. Essential service improvements, such as opening the Silver Line Phase 2 and reducing headways, as you all know, require more than those 16 trains in service. On October 25th, the WMSC approved a revised return to service plan that allows for gradual steps to add more 7K trains into service. These steps create a path for Metro to complete manual measurements while also creating efficiencies based on proven safety and engineering analyses. On November 6th, south of National Airport will reopen with Blue and Blue Plus service. And I know this because we're moving trains out of that yard as we speak. As we have additional trains and operators, they will be used in supplemental service to reduce crowding. Metro now has the trains available to support and open Silver Line Phase 2 on November 15th, which was not possible before the latest return to service plan was approved. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the WMSC for their support in approving this plan, and of course, all of our hardworking teammates who've made it possible. Rail operations staff work very closely with scheduling and ROC staff to review daily ridership numbers. The team makes adjustments to service based on data reviews, field oversight, and camera monitoring of actual service conditions. We expect to improve all-day headways on the red line to reduce crowding. Headways will improve from 10 minutes to every 8 minutes, obviously contingent on having the requisite number of trains and operators. This service change requires Metro to advance to the next step in the return to service plan, and that is running low-tonnage vehicles on all lines. In late December, Metro will implement a new labor pick, which will include staff that will enable increasing peak headways on the red, blue, orange, and silver lines. Red would run every 6 minutes during rush hour. Blue, orange, and silver lines would run at every 12. This will require Metro to advance to step 3 in the return to service plan in order to have enough trains to increase these peak headways. That's moving the inspection interval from the 4 days it is at now to 7 days. In May, we hope to be able to run FY23 budgeted rail service after the yellow lines reopens. Again, this is predicated on making sure we have the trains and the rail operators to do so. This budgeted service includes peak headways of red every 5 minutes and blue, orange, silver, green, and yellow all at 10-minute intervals. The return of the 7K fleet has been over a year in the making, and we thank our customers for their patience as we return the fleet into service. Metro is looking forward to providing customers the rail service they deserve. I'd be remiss again if I didn't call out my teammates for all the hard work that they've undertaken to accomplish this. Now I'll pivot to bus, if I can work this.
It's totally fine to leave this 6-minute headways on the red line slide up. We can just leave that up for like
Director, I did that by mistake. My apologies.
soaking it up.
I can assure you our service runs more efficiently than this. John, if you could, I appreciate it. Sorry, John, I'm sure it's me as well. On to bus. Bus service, as we all know, was reduced during the pandemic. Service returned to overall system-wide pre-pandemic levels by September 2021, when Metrobus introduced the 36 frequent bus network. These routes now run more service on middays and weekends than during pre-COVID periods. Resources for the frequent bus network were reallocated from former route variations that provided peak capacity to downtown offices. This allocation of service better reflects trip changes post-pandemic, such as reduction in customers traveling to office buildings and the need to support all-day and 7-day travel markets. However, even though service on paper is at restored levels, we are experiencing a shortage of approximately 100 bus operators. This shortage does cause missed trips and causes some unreliable service for our customers. Metro expects to reduce the operator shortage through strategies in recruitment and training of bus operators. We have already implemented a program of a $5,000 bonus to attract more bus operator candidates. We have reduced some previous requirements in place, such as having a high school diploma or a GED. And I'd like to note at that point, we have changed that requirement. We are doing everything we can to encourage people we bring in as employees to get that GED or that high school diploma, and we're providing them the resources or the help to try to assist them to do that. The bus team is undertaking efforts to recruit and train additional instructors. This is really critically important because what we're finding is, even with the hiring, I think we probably could have done a better job of projecting forward about the actual number of in-service instructors we needed. We're adjusting that as we speak, and to be honest, we've talked to Ray Jackson and some of his leadership team about that because they're obviously very concerned to ensure that the operators get all the training they need and are trained correctly off the bat. We're also working with 689 and bringing back retirees as line platform instructors. These instructors are focused on in-service trips, not classroom. In December, Metrobus will restore service frequencies on some of our busiest routes. These include the 70, which operates on Georgia Avenue and 7th Street, the L2, which operates on Connecticut Avenue between Chevy Chase and Farragut Square, the N2 and N4, which operate in the Massachusetts Avenue corridor between Friendship Heights and Farragut Square, and the S2, which operates on 16th Street between Silver Spring and Metro Center. These routes were temporarily reduced in September 2022 due to operator shortages. These restored frequencies are the 70 restoring peak frequency to 12 minutes, the L2 increasing weekday peak frequency to 10 minutes, the N2 and the N4 increasing weekday AM peak frequency to 10 minutes in the core, the S2 increasing weekday peak frequency to 10-minute service. Throughout the spring, it is our intention to improve service as operator availability increases, and that will mostly be done through a reduction in drop trips. As we approach the June 2023 operator pick work selection, Metro will assess ridership and work to expand peak service capacity. And folks, I've talked about this with many of our staff, but I have never been exposed to an agency where the planning and scheduling people work so harmoniously with the operating people. It's really a sight to see. Bus service is important to the Washington Metro region, and the general manager and his entire team are dedicated to improving service. Having a unified system ensures that our riders get the best experience possible. This concludes my remarks, Chair Drummond. I'm very happy to take questions or comments from you or other members of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And I really want to extend special thanks to you and the entire team. for the progress, focus, and near-term actions that you've laid out. This is exciting. It's a tremendous convergence of activities and processes that will lead to some great success, so we look forward to it. I do have one question I'll begin with, and then I'll turn it over to committee members.
Certainly, sir.
And other board members. The first is dealing with this very slide. There's quite a bit packed into the bus service piece of this, and I want to put it in three buckets. The first is losses, gains, and then either net losses or gains. On the loss side, you talked about attrition, and I'll look for a little more definition on that in a second. But that attrition, as I would see it, would be retirements and departures, voluntary and involuntary. The bus operators transitioning to rail, which is outstanding, upward mobility opportunities. In the first, attrition is 25 per month. And the bus operators transitioning, on average, it's around 35 per month, which is 60. Then I move to gains. And when I look at gains, we're looking at recruitment. And I think it's great that we're looking at recruiting somewhere around 475, which would be on average 39 per month. So I look at the end of the day, the net loss would be 21. And my question is that 21 the norm for Metro in managing the workforce, the operators on the bus lines? And if it is the norm, how do you address that?
Chair, I would say this. I'm obviously fairly new here, so the numbers I'm being provided are talking with Leroy and his staff and the HR staff about what we traditionally have coming in and coming out. What we are in the process of doing is establishing basically a personnel control board that will meet monthly. It will have representatives from all the requisite departments, including bus and rail, because I do think, I'm not saying we necessarily have to revisit what we've done in the past, but I think we have to be really strategic about how and when we pull people from rail. And I think in order to do that, it genuinely has to be data-driven. So, you know, you folks have seen presentations and heard from Andrea and Jordan Holt. We really need to work closely with those folks. We have a data-rich system. We're able to really dig into ridership numbers and on-time performance numbers. So I think we really have to work closely with them in order to kind of make those decisions. I'd also say, Chair, we have to continue to dig into how it is that we can get more bus operators trained. And I think adding some instruction staff who are permanent instructors, and just quickly, a permanent instructor is somebody, that's their job to do training. They do it all day, every day. They can do it in the classroom, they can do it anywhere. I think most properties that I've been exposed to, including the authority, uses line platform instructors as well. Those are the folks, I was a line platform instructor when I worked for the T. We would take out fellow operators when they were breaking in, just to kind of show them how it was done when you get out of the classroom. So I think we really need to focus on making sure we have the ability to increase some of the instructors, but then also working with some of the line platform instructors. And to be honest, Chair, also really digging into training with regards to how we have that laid out, and if there's any efficiencies we may be able to come up with between classroom time and the line platform instructor time.
Great. Thank you very much.
Certainly, sir.
I'll open the floor to committee members. Dr. Lowe?
I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, because I think that when we drop a trip on a bus route that's on a 30-minute headway, that means you're potentially leaving someone waiting at the bus stop for an hour, right? They could have already waited almost the maximum headway, and then we're asking them to wait it again. It's literally ruining someone's entire day. Obviously, this happened to me, or I wouldn't be this mad about it. 96 bus never came to get me last Saturday. Just sat there with a 3-year-old who needed to potty. It was really not great.
My apologies, Director.
This is not about me. There are people all over the city waiting for the bus, and then it doesn't come. If we left someone waiting on a rail platform for an hour, it would be front page news. So we really need to address bus service reliability. We're talking right now about people and making sure that we have the people that we need to deliver bus service. is that the whole story about why bus service is so unreliable right now? And what else do we need to be doing? Twice recently, I have boarded buses, and it's been super old buses that I was really surprised to see. Old buses that don't have the little plastic thing between the driver and the passengers. There's been no thing. This has happened twice. Once when I boarded a D6 in Southeast, once when I boarded like a 33 on Wisconsin Avenue during rush hour. Broken fare boxes on one of those buses too, the teeny short old fare box, like so teeny my toddler could tap herself. So are we okay on actual buses? Because this presentation is just talking about this as if this is just about operator availability.
Director, I'll have to look into some of what you're mentioning with regards to the coaches, because we should, my understanding is we have shields on all the buses. That's the first I'm hearing of that.
Twice.
So, yeah, I don't doubt the veracity of what you're saying at all, obviously. So we're really focused on operator shortages because we're 100 operators short. That is certainly not the whole picture with any service. It's between operators and vehicles you have in place. I do think that some of the activity we'll be taking in the next number of months where we're consolidating the control centers and really looking into our business processes about how we run the service on a daily basis. I don't want to indicate that they will, make immediate improvements, but I would say probably midterm improvements when we really start to dig in how it is that we operate the service and how we have management staff in the control center who are actually addressing service across the board writ large, working with the controllers about how we do that. I would also say, Director, that when we have instances where we have a bus route with those long headways that we have something missing, we should be getting supervisory staff out there to check in with customers about on routes like that. Because for a more frequently run route with better headways, that can happen. For a route you're describing, that should never happen.
Right, like, if one bus doesn't come and the next bus is coming in 10 minutes, c'est la vie, like when there's a lot of traffic downtown, right, like Halloween, that was wild, and like, I think there was one really mad lady at the bus, but I think everybody else like pretty much gets it. But, but this kind of stuff happens all the time and simply passes without remark. And that's what has to stop.
Chair, you mind if I just want to add a couple comments to that. So, Director, I've said that from the day I got here. Bus is very important to Brian and I, the whole team, but we are from the top leadership. I've said this very publicly, and I mean it sincerely. A bus customer and a rail customer are equal, and we are working through that. I think we just have to be honest. I don't know if culturally that has always been the case, and so we have a little bit of a hole to dig out of there. I think when Brian started, we were down almost 150 operators as an example. So we are every day making progress. We're making some decisions on the leadership team that are going to be announced really soon that are going to take some people from acting roles and make them permanent. That will bring structure to that part as well. Part of what I also wanted to talk about is, if you have a 30-minute route and we are running normal service, but you have a mechanical failure, that might actually happen from time to time. Shouldn't, obviously, be very, very frequently, but it could. The biggest issue that I want to work on immediately is, while Brian and his team are working through staffing and all of those components, is Leroy and the IT team are working through ability to have better real-time predictable information. And so we probably should have some information on that soon. But the idea that in 2022, our current software doesn't allow us at a control center to delete a bus that is not filled in the schedule and therefore looks like what people call a ghost bus is not okay. And so that's what we are also working on. So I think most people at a bus stop, that when a sign says a bus is going to be 8 minutes, and if it shows up in 9 minutes, 10 minutes, they're going to be okay because the bus is in traffic with everyone else. When it says 8 minutes and then that bus never shows up and the next one that's 23 minutes shows up, that's unacceptable. And we have a kind of a legacy system issue that we are working on right now. The software team is already working through that, so we hope to have something deployed in not too distant future. We'll get an update on that. But I think that we want to work on our signage out in the field with our, whether it's jurisdictional partners or our piece as well. Brian mentioned the control center. That's going to go a long way. We really want to make sure our supervisors, I've been out on rush hour, I think Brian has as well, on the street with our supervisory team. We want to help them have all the tools they can to deliver that service. I was out with our transit police officers, clearing people from our bus-only lanes, which we need our jurisdictional partners to be all in on that. We need people out of our bus lanes during rush hour, period. Now, that means ticket or tow them. If it was up to me, I'd have my own wrecker, and I'd be hauling people all day long. That's an important thing. We got people park in bus stops all over the place here. We got to deal with that. And for transparency, we've had our staff parking where they're not supposed to be. And I guarantee you the COO has made it very crystal clear to our staff, if you're doing that, you will not be, you'll be held accountable for that. So it's a multifaceted approach. I just wanted to add in what Brian's doing. I think there's a lot to this. And so, as you mentioned, incremental change over time is going to happen on bus.
Okay, I really appreciate that additional texture, though, because I think that speaks to a couple things that are really customer-facing in terms of what the experience of this is like and what needs to change, which is like, yes, people just, everyone's using the apps now, and if that worked better, then I think that speaks to transparency, you know, and people will offer us more flexibility and grace if we can just provide more information. And then the bigger picture of keeping cars out of the bus lane, needing to move towards more dedicated right-of-way. Everybody understands that that's going to take a lot of time. Like, in the meantime, though, what is I understand you can't give me a date, but are we talking like weeks, months, years in terms of like getting to better tech? This, like, addressing some of these like small tech issues in terms of like knowing where the buses are and when they're going to come.
Yeah, obviously, we know where the buses are. The issue is our current scheduling software versus the real-time piece. There's a kind of a legacy piece there. I don't want to overcommit on something because, quite frankly, I'm not running that particular project, obviously, but I think we are more into weeks and months than we are for multiple months. So our goal is to get more transparency and cleanliness around bus real-time data this calendar year than it is next year. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't take into some next year, but I will tell you, the group is working very hard. Arguably, the two highest priorities in bus operations right now are getting our data and technology fixed, so it's cleaner and more transparent to the public, and number two, staffing correctly.
Okay, that's great, and I'm glad we're talking about this because I've been asking about this real-time data issue since I first read the fleet management plan. I mean, this is like a year ago that I started asking about this. This is like the first that I'm hearing that, like, oh yeah, someone's working on that. So I'm glad that's happening.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Drummer. Actually, following up on one of the questions that the chair asked earlier, regarding the attrition rate of 25 operators a month, that's a snapshot from right now, is that right? Or are you seeing any different trends?
I don't know exactly how far that goes back, Director Klein. What I asked is, could you give me a reasonable number, a number that you'd be comfortable with me providing to the board, and that's what it was.
Okay.
So.
I think that these figures are very interesting because they highlight the scope of the challenge that we're facing. And losing 25 operators a month for many different reasons is significant. Is it reasonable to expect that we'll be able to recruit 475? It seems like a lot.
It does seem like a lot, Director Klein. We will do our best. I'd like to see us beat that, which is really why we're digging into the idea of kind of expanding that training group, but also kind of meeting on a monthly basis to make sure we have those numbers set. And I would say, we're doing, the team was just at a Redskins game recently recruiting. We're doing everything we can to really get the word out there.
Don't worry, I'll let Brian
Washington
know
Commanders.
that the team changed their name, so I'll let Brian know.
I'm terribly sorry. The Commanders. I'm an old guy who's been watching the NFL. My apologies. But yeah, I was wondering why everybody was smiling. My apologies.
We knew what you meant.
But really focused on doing that. But I think, Director, everybody is incredibly busy and well-meaning here. I do feel like if we don't have a snapshot every month of how we're doing, it can really get lost in the milieu, and we need to do that. And I would also say my hope in reducing that attrition rate really ties back to training, because some of those people we're losing, it's because we're putting them on the street and they have an accident or they have something else come up. So I think longer term, Teresa, the GM, and I, all of us have talked about kind of just culture and how we apply that. but I think short-term, it's really getting them the appropriate training so we can do right by them and they can do right by us.
I think that's an absolutely wonderful focus, very important. I know this is an industry-wide issue.
Of course.
And I hope, obviously, you'll be, since you'll be talking about it monthly, there'll be opportunities for any type of additional incentives that are needed or whatever. If there are other agencies that are seeing significant success, maybe there are other ideas. Nothing comes to my mind other than what you've already listed, but allergy season again. It's year-round these days. But I hope that we can get some regular updates on how these numbers are.
Certainly, Director Klein, my hope would they would be positive, but there'll be updates nonetheless. And I would say, I know I mentioned 689 a couple of times in my remarks, but that's something we continue to chat with Ray and the executive team about. The general manager and I, in addition to chatting with him quite frequently, have a monthly meeting with him. So it's something he's really dedicated to. I was actually on the phone with him quite late last night talking about a couple of issues. So
Great.
they're great partners there.
Just one last comment. We've been, with reason, thanking the maintenance teams for getting the 7,000 series out. I rode my first one this morning and
Excellent.
however long, it's been more than a year because I'd been off during the pandemic. That thing was beautiful, sparklingly clean. It came in, the sun was shining on it. It was beautiful. It's a new day. And I just want to thank not only the team that made sure those were, technically in good shape for operations, but the folks who are cleaning them, the folks who are cleaning the stations. I had the opportunity to speak with a supervisor of the maintenance team when I was at the Better Bus launch event. Just hearing what the folks who clean the stations deal with on a day-to-day basis. I just wanted to thank them, and I hope that you can pass that along to those folks, because it is incredible what they do to keep the stations clean.
No, Director Klein, I don't want to sound like I'm the operations guy, not the marketing guy, but I have never seen better station staff than I have here. They work incredibly well, and I think we talked some about the after peer review we had come in. We're really looking maybe midterm or longer term to really kind of coalesce all of that around station management, because we have massive stations, and we have actually, I've got back from people I know either just through life or through the industry who have checked in to say, I can't believe how clean your stations are. So it's just, that's really rewarding to hear, but that is all about the people who work their tail off every day undertaking that for all of us and our customers.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Ms. Klein asked my questions, but I will say, just adding my thanks to the rail team and the general manager and I and you, Brian. We were out in Alexandria Yard about a week ago now, I guess, and it really is a good group out there. We got to meet a lot of folks, and they really are doing all they can, and it's interesting. They too were very excited to see that yard open and get those trains out of there, because everywhere you looked, all you saw were 7,000 trains sitting in that yard, and it's a big yard.
It is, yeah. They're amped up about what they do, Mr. Chair, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think they all appreciated being recognized, and it was awfully nice of you to take the time. Thank you.
Mr. Letourneau?
Thank you. On the cleanliness issue, we live in this age of social media, and a single tweet of a train that's got some trash on it or something gets blasted all over everywhere. I think leads to impression that, the system isn't clean. So, and maybe in the past we didn't do as good a job, but clearly we're putting a lot of emphasis on this now. So we just have to, it'll take time to change that narrative, but it should be changed. Can you go back to the rail service restoration slides?
Yes, sir.
So this one amused me a little bit, because we kind of had we go from December 27th to May, which is pretty, we have a lot of detail, and then it's sort of a 6-month gap between improving peak headways and Yellow Line reopens, and we're actually running budgeted service, which would be great. So I was wondering if you could walk us through a little bit, in that time period, what actually needs to happen to get to May, and then specifically, as far as the 7K issue, is that the period that we need to implement the automatic or the automated inspection system that we are working on?
So I'll point, Director, the reason is actually the period between the labor pick. So the operatives pick will commence in December. It will then commence in May. So that's the reason for the big stretch. I would say, Director, to be honest, we don't have perfect line of sight on all that will transpire there. So I think, as we're all aware, there are several steps within the return to service plan now. We are in step one, where we're running low tonnage vehicles in service where we had not before. The next step of that, once we reach the certain threshold with regards to mileage and measurements, and we have a discussion with the WMSC about some of that next week, will be to go to step two, where we will run the low tonnage vehicles everywhere. We will then, again, look at, provide all the data we can, and then look to go to step three, which would be the 7-day interval. So my expectation would be, and I'm a little, I was going to say I'm reticent. I couldn't provide you details today, Director, because I do think that once we get to that 7-day interval, which I'm confident we will be, we then have to work with internally WMSC about what the standing interval might be. And I understand from discussions I've had with Teresa and the team that was here before I was, the analysis we've undertaken to kind of get to the point we're at now. I think we'll be revisiting some of that. We have 2 AWIS sites installed. A third is...
Is that the acronym we're using for the automated?
It is, correct. Yeah.
Say that again?
We may be changing that.
Yes.
So it's the automatic wayside inspection, but I think we all agree that I just wanted to jump in, sorry, Brian.
Certainly.
We're using this for back-to-back measurement, but it's actually, these are systems installed around the world to do predictive maintenance. So they're going to be doing a lot of other measurements and analysis work off of a train. This is just the first component we want to use it for. So it's actually more about kind of a drive-through technology to really do in predictive maintenance.
So we have 2 installed now,
Correct.
and we're looking to get data from those and see how they perform.
Yeah, so data's coming in right now.
We're getting data from that. The engineering team is working, going through that, trying to kind of justify that with the wheel measurements we're taking.
And then we have additional ones coming that will be installed in this next 6-month period.
I would want to have the schedule in front of me to provide that to you, Director. I know we have 2 installed. I know we have a third going in now, and I know the plan is for 6, and we may have options for others. But, Director, I'll be honest, since I've been here, we've really been focused on what's going on with the now, with the 7Ks, and we can never forget about kind of the longer term. I would say I certainly haven't paid as much attention to that as I probably should have, but in the last 2 weeks, we've started to have...
A lot of the narrative when this happened, and right, really getting into the summer, was that this kind of technology was going to be the thing that allowed us to get back to service. I think what the team has done is sort of provided, through the inspection process, an alternative way to get back to service potentially, but it is very labor intensive. So that's why I'm asking this question.
Yeah, I guess I just give a little clarity to that, which is we want to... The most important thing we have to do every day is deliver safe service, and we are never going to compromise that. And so what we want to do is, again, when we arrived here, we had, I think, 8 trains, and we were measuring every day with no actual plan of return. We were trying to figure out what a return plan could look like. We now have a return to service plan with our partners at WMSC, as Brian went through, with 3 clean steps. In parallel, some people that are working for Andy, a little bit of Brian's team, and a couple people of Teresa's team are working on AWIS. But we wanted to actually get that up and running, get tons of data, start then doing a correlation analysis between the 2, and more importantly, get through various weather conditions. So I was very, I would use the word reticent to actually put all of our eggs in the basket of AWIS until we saw different environmental conditions. Knock on wood, we will have no issues with environmental conditions because these are installed in different parts of the world. But to put all of our eggs in the basket that way, to me, was maybe not being as cautious from a safety point of view as I believe we needed to be. Teresa and I talked about that. Brian got on board, and Andy, we all talked about that. So we're kind of running parallel paths. I think the piece between December and May is going to be, we want to make clear, there will be iterative gains between December and May, with the idea by May, we'll be back to budgeted service. So in February and March, it could be better than in December. We just don't have that granularity until Brian can get to step 3. Then they can see how they can manage all the yards with a 7-day interval. And then what we're trying to do is sometime, realistically by spring, then start seeing where AWIS and the manual measurements are really tight from a data point of view, and then can the 7 move to maybe a 14 or even a 30, more standard in the industry, because our data analysis is so regimented and quality-based from the automated system. So what Brian wanted to do here, and I just kind of really want to add this publicly, I think this is important. We wanted to really lean in to transparency, trying to create a public understanding of the milestones this team is working towards. This community has had a lack of quality service for well over a year, and we have more service today than we had 2 months ago, and 2 months before that. In 2 months, you could see we're going to have more service. We're just trying to show the community that there is a path forward here. And, also, I think the narrative in some parts of the region are that we're running really infrequent service. We're actually starting to run a pretty decent service. Is it where it needs to be? No, I don't want to pretend those are the same things. But depending on where you are in the service, there's pretty good frequency. And we're just going to keep building that day by day.
Thank you. Mr. Smedberg?
Thank you. Brian, while we're talking about it, the jump to May, this is the third extended shutdown of the yellow line. And, that these people have just not had service, the area I live in. Where are we with the tunnel project? Just very briefly, are we in good shape on that? Are we, because a lot of this depends on that project.
Mr. Chair, to tell you the truth, I'm not up to speed on the schedule for the tunnel project at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just tell you, Chair, that Andy's delivering that component, and my understanding is that part of the project, the tunnel and the bridge, we are currently on schedule and tracking well. But most importantly is the other part of the Orange Line, which is as Brian said, which is great news. He said that publicly before he told me, which is very okay, because it means we're doing stuff. We're moving trains into Alexandria Yard right now. We'll be back into regular service on Sunday, and that remaining piece, my update is that we're on schedule.
Thank you. Dr. Helfer?
Thanks. First of all, thanks to you and Brian and the whole team for all this good work and the progress. It's really amazing. I just want to circle back to 2 things. One is just to reinforce a little bit of what Dr. Lowe mentioned about late even starting on the lines, like people gathering in large groups waiting for the first bus to get there. Moved to bus, not rail, sorry. And so how is it that at the beginning of a day, we're already backed up, as opposed to, I get once we're moving forward, but at the beginning of a scheduled day, how is it that people are just, the buses aren't coming?
Yeah, Doctor, honestly, without knowing the details of a particular day, I could tell you from experience, it probably has to do with kind of a late bang-in somebody calling out sick late that management isn't aware of, so they're scrambling to get somebody on there. Or it may be there is hostling that goes on in bus facilities as you're getting coaches out of the garage that have been kind of either inspected or had corrective maintenance activities taken on them, that occasionally you do run into situations where even at the start of a day, you may have difficulty getting out. But I would hope they are few and far between.
Yeah, so, just rider feedback, getting some of that. So I'll follow up on some specifics with you, so thank you. And then just on recruitment, can you talk a little bit about some of the partnerships that we're doing? Recruitment is about pipeline. And
Very good.
These are good paying jobs that don't require college educations. We're offering, GED options. So what kind of partnerships are we building to really get people excited about working in the transit industry and in this pipeline of good opportunity?
So, Doctor, I'm not as up to speed as I should be with regard to partnerships. I will say part of what I was talking to President Jackson about last night was that very thing, though, about kind of community groups and church groups that he's involved in. We didn't schedule the meeting at 10:45 last night, but we did have a discussion about getting the right people together to really dig in on that, because part of the discussion we had last evening was about that very thing. It all ties together. Our bus and rail service, those operators count for all of it. So it's real. I could not agree with your point more with regards to having the right partnerships in place. I don't have a perfect answer for you now, but I can assure you we'll give you an update. And I really need to talk to Diana and some of the other folks internally about what we've been doing there, because frankly, I'm just not as up to speed on it as I should be.
Yeah, and, I would say everyone has partnerships, and so, take advantage of all the relationships that we all have, so thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Brian, again, thank you for this timely update. And with no further business to come before, we will stand adjourned.
Thank you,
I'll turn the
Chair.
floor
Thank
over to
you.
Mr. Smedberg, who has a request for the board to meet. in executive session.
In accordance with the bylaws, I, Paul Smedberg, request that the Board of Directors convene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections A, budgetary matters that may affect legal positions, WMATA contracts, or sensitive relationships with local jurisdictions of the federal government. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Lowe. All in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you.